Hey everybody, and welcome to an episode of Community Feedback. And this, obviously, the big topic. This has been just insane for the channel this week. The Destiny 2 Fallout, brought in by Refunds, essentially Microsoft, Sony, apparently offering refunds. I know I put in a request. I need to follow up with that. But you guys, oh my gosh, welcome to all our new community members. If you guys have not seen our other content, we like to take your comments and highlight them in a series in which that we're calling this community feedback. Also, just as a note, I've had the flu pretty much since Monday and have been out and about. My voice is kind of in and out, but Chris and I usually get together on Thursdays to do this. We're doing this over a Zoom meeting because we don't have that ability. And hopefully he doesn't get sick. He says that he's not feeling that great. But we wanted to make sure that we sat down and really kind of responded to y'all's comments. Again, thousands. It's not a figurative speech. You guys have really weighed in on this topic, and so we picked several interesting points, pro and con, for Destiny and Destiny 2, and we wanted to discuss them with you guys here right now in this episode of Community Feedback Zoom meeting edition. So anyway, without further ado, Chris, why don't you lead us in to our first comment?
Thank you, Brian. So first of all, I did want to say thank you to all of you who were able to stay respectful. This is a huge comment section. It was an incredibly polarizing issue, and by and large, the vast majority of the comments were very respectful. We're all gamers here. We all like games. We may not all like the same games, the same platforms, but just because somebody disagrees with us or you or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that they don't deserve at least the level of respect to have an open and honest conversation. So with that, let's jump in to Big Ego. I like your respect and honesty, candor, and willingness to own up to your own mistake. However, I must respectfully disagree with you on one point. A lot of you YouTubers keep harping on it's not the developer's fault, it's the greedy publishers. The fact is, though, that Activision did not sign Bungie up at gunpoint. EA did not threaten to kill the devs at BioWare if they didn't sign on. The devs signed knowing the reprehensible publishers they were signing on with. They then beat their breasts to the heavens saying, it's not my fault, it's the greedy developer. No, they signed on because they got greedy themselves. Not one of these devs has had the honesty and candor to own up to this fact. So now they're ringing hollow. As for the record, neither Activision nor EA will ever get a dime of my money until they do something concrete to make amends for the cash they've stolen from all of us. And promises will not be considered amends. Good video.
So really interesting point, Big Ego. I definitely am going to be somebody who typically sides with the developer. I'm a developer myself. I'm not in games, but I'm in software for that reason. And I've more than had that experience with who's paying the bill, and and then we're doing the work. And it's that sometimes even the people fitting the bill can end up being their own worst enemy. They can go and say they want something, and then you give it to them, and they're like, "This is not what I asked for." And then it's always this back and forth and this extra drama. But you're right. Nobody was signed up at gunpoint that we know of. That'd be interesting and horrible. But it is, I guess, a good respect. And the fact is that I think that you're really kind of looking at it on both sides of the angle is admirable. I'm going to disagree that it essentially is always that, because those developers themselves, maybe I'm looking at it as the whole, because the developer isn't just one person. It's like hundreds, especially these AAA games, like 300 people, and then you have HR, you have all this. I'm assuming don't all have a vote as to who and what is funding their game. They just know that I show up for work, I do what I'm told, and I get paid. And you hope at the end of the day to make a good product. Nobody goes into this, nobody, especially the developer, wants to release anything less than. Typically contracts and things like that, especially in the gaming industry, work that as the game gets certain ratings on Metacritic, bonuses are paid out. As it hits certain milestones, bonuses are paid out. Everybody wants to win, and I think essentially a takeaway that I would have is that I don't think anybody won today. Anyway, Chris?
I think that it's fair to toss them in. In school, I was taught that there has to be a good team, the developer, the Bungie, and there has to be a good client. Let's call that Activision. And then there has to be a good project. And I was taught this in regards to architecture. That's what I studied in school. But it really does apply here. You had a game that had a target project, right? We want to make a first-person shooter MMO. That's the project. And we have a team full of people willing to do it, and we have a client that's willing to pay for it. And so you can't blame any of the three totally by themselves, because they don't operate in a vacuum, and you can't have an amazing award-winning game without all three hitting on all cylinders. You can't. If any one of those is weak, they will all fall. So to say that they can't do reprehensible things is not fair. My wife works for an architecture firm that has clients all over the world. Occasionally that means they have clients in parts of the world that live very different than we do and have a very different level of respect for, be that women or be that a class system or something like that. And it's very easy to say, well, they just shouldn't take those projects, but they also should continue to be able to pay my wife's salary every month. And so you have to, the world is a lot grayer than we learned in school. You get out here and you realize, I can't just say, this is the list of things I'll absolutely never do, and this is the list of things I'll only do, because sometimes what's available is not on either of those lists. I do think that Bungie is at fault. I do think that Activision is at fault. And I do think that you're going to have a tough time boycotting both Activision and EA until they do something concrete, because that is such a vast majority of the market. I applaud you, and I think it's awesome. I don't know that I could boycott something that big, and that kind of sucks.
And and I don't want to discourage anybody considering a boycott. You just need to also make sure that you let them know, because it's one thing for us to say, I'm never buying your games again, and that's that. That at the end of the day,
they have to speculate why the money's missing.
Right. Like, okay, we're down what, 0.25%. Okay.
Maybe people just don't like games anymore.
Right. They could even take the wrong idea out of it. Maybe we're not charging enough for these microtransactions. Maybe that's why. They could go the wrong way. You got to make sure your voice is heard, and that's one of the reasons why I encourage, despite the fact that I don't know if everybody will, obviously get a refund. I don't think I'm entitled to one. I don't think I'm going to get it. But I wanted to make sure that Microsoft heard my voice, because every time somebody picks up that phone, it's Microsoft, Sony, whatever, that's costing Microsoft and Sony money. At some point, that dollar amount is going to be big enough that they're going to care. They're going to say
100,000 phone calls at 1 minute apiece is 100,000 minutes of billable time.
Right. And they're fitting that bill, and so that's why it's really, really important that people voice up and are heard. Again, no refund, no big deal, because at least you spoke up. So it's important that, especially if we're going to follow through on this boycott, whether you can get more people to join you, maybe you can, organize. You have a louder voice in that regard. But hopefully, this is, if this is what your stance is, you let EA and you let Activision know, and you let them know, and you let everybody who wants to join you to let them know.
And it can be a two-step process, because you can't hit them without hitting their wallet. They won't care. But
hit the wall. Where
Twitter is powerful is when they say, okay, there's a revenue drop, and here's what's trending on Twitter. Mm-hmm. They can connect the dots. And so if you're tweeting at them that you don't like them anymore, but you're still buying their games, they're going to ignore that.
Yeah.
If you're not buying their games and you're just not buying their games, they're just going to change their games, because they're going to assume there's something wrong with the game, but they don't know what it is. Maybe people only want free-to-play games now, and that is not what I want.
Not at all.
Not buying the next Bungie game makes them only come out with free-to-play games. That does not make the industry better for my goals of the kind of games I want to play.
Hashtag microtransaction gate, everybody. Make it.
So I think you want both. You want people that are speaking up, and you want a revenue drop, so that their shareholders, when a guy gets up and says, I need an extra $15 million next year to develop these features for our games, the shareholders aren't just looking at as you're spending $15 million. They're saying, if they don't do that, we don't sell games. Right. So I have to let those guys develop whatever it is they think is going to sell.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Anyway, Big Ego, a fantastic comment. I wish you luck. And again, thank you so much for your comment. Next up, we have Archangel Gabriel. Bungie is letting Destiny 2 become the next No Man's Sky. Big words, man.
Yes. So I don't think that's fair, because I think that they're different core issues. Mm-hmm. No Man's Sky was an indie developer picked up by Sony that propelled them into the limelight. So it would be like if PUBG, which came out of a studio that's been around since 2007, but they have very little titles to their name. So took a relatively new and propelled them to the next level. And now they have partners like things like Microsoft and things like that. And so that's kind of like a success story, what No Man's Sky was hoping to be. Destiny 2 is a sequel from a studio that's very established and has award-winning games dating back all the way to my childhood. So this is more of Blizzard falling on their face. This is more, right? So Blizzard is owned by Activision, partnered with that, whatever you want to call that. This is a studio falling. This is BioWare making a mistake. Somebody who we should have known, we should have trusted. I've seen a lot of comments that say we're idiots for trusting them with our pre-sale, and that point can be debated. But ultimately, the reason we were even willing to have that conversation was because it was Bungie. It wasn't just nobody.
Right. I honestly like the pre-sale debate in which that people it really hits me hard because I was on the fence. Like I told Chris, I was like, I'm gonna wait to see what they show, and then I'll make a call in July. And in July, yeah, you know, and at that time I was like, this is great. I'm jumping in. And that's when they got me. They didn't get me when they first announced it because, again, I was like, and the things that I told Chris that were important, you know, custom PvP matches, and then they didn't do it. So I kind of swallowed that. I kind of put in it. It's like, we're like, well, if anything good came out of this is that we didn't move our whole game night group over to this game, you know, because
we would have
if they had
on Call of Duty because of custom game match support.
Mm-hmm. So we did not make that jump because of that. And then they didn't even talk about it. And that was another issue. But then they were like, okay, well, I was like, oh, they're releasing these 2 DLCs. It feels very Destiny Year 1. And that just was like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it in Destiny Year 1, but then I swallowed it. So that's why my video, that especially I think we took this from, it's called, you know, an apology. And it's because, like, I should have known better. They did this to me in Destiny 1, and I didn't like it, but I was willing to forgive it. And then they did it again. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back. This wasn't the one issue. Again,
this wasn't they didn't know. They came out and said, we know your issues, we hear your issues, and then they just blatantly ignored the speeches they gave us.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you start adding it all up together, and then it's just like, doesn't have a lot of depth. There's not a lot there. And then you start looking at it and go, and I made a video on it, and it kind of fell in between the 2 big videos that we made. But it was just like, Destiny 2 is a subscription-based game without calling itself a subscription-based game with this model. And it's right. that doesn't seem right, or it seems almost deceptive, you know, when you look at it, you know, and so that's the thing. And so to the point with Archangels regarding No Man's Sky is that I think No Man's Sky, the expectation was off. I think with Bungie and with Destiny 2, the expectation should have been met. I don't think they have an excuse there.
And I think the other issue is No Man's Sky promised features that didn't deliver. Bungie did something much more deceptive. You said it absolutely right, Brian. Mm-hmm. They put the features in. They gave us the features. PvP works. Trials of the Nine works. Curse of Osiris, all of this, the prestige raids, they work. And then they took them away. Mm-hmm. This is much, much worse. I think the people at No Man's Sky were sick to their stomach. I think they lost just as much sleep as we did. I think Bungie, on the other hand, had a working game and then ripped it out of people's hands, saying this group of people paid and they're going to get to move on. And those of you that simply believed because we put something on a game box that it was true, joke's on you.
Right. And
that is a much worse message to send.
And I think that's where you also see a lot of the outrage. It's not actually this. I think this was the thing that just made all the other problems unbearable. Like, I can forgive this, or they're gonna fix this with. Honestly, there's a lot. Like, I was like, oh great, they're finally talking about the future and about custom PvP, all this stuff that should have been in ranked PvP, all this stuff that should have been in, and it would have been in, but they had to like completely rebuild the game, and they left they left all this content behind. It's like it just. Again, just one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing, and finally this happened. And again, like when I made that one video, the one that really kind of went viral based off of like our size, I was not anticipating that I was going to be leaving at that point. But after like having conversations that weekend, after really kind of thinking about it, and then after going and saying, you know what, this isn't right. It was an interesting journey for me, and it's actually a journey in which that I feel better for it. I feel much more, I guess, much happier. Obviously, it wasn't a happy topic to talk about, but I feel better coming out this side of it, And hopefully with this video itself, putting kind of a button on the whole story as a whole, because we do like to make sure that you guys have your voices heard in that regards. But Archangel, I do appreciate you weighing in, and thank you so much.
And hopefully this means that you weren't burned by No Man's Sky also, because if so, you've had a rough year.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Thank you so much. And we'll jump to the next comment. Judai Masters. Funny coming from somebody who plays Final Fantasy 14 because it has the problems. After you beat the story, there is nothing to do. You have microtransactions via the Mog Shop, and Square Enix doesn't want you to play Final Fantasy 14 for long. And you pay $15 per month. As a fan of both games, it's sad to see I can't play an MMO or an MMO Lite nowadays because casuals and greed are ruining them.
Very interesting comment. We want to highlight this. Yeah, well, it is. I can see where someone's coming from, because that, if you're not, I never want to sit here and say, oh, there's tons of stuff to do in Final Fantasy 14, because there is, but you might not be interested in it. And so there's you're not required, nor should you be required to do all the, just because you can go craft and you can go do this. If you have no interest in it, that there's no reason to suggest that you go do that. But as far as it goes, I still would think that 14 offers a lot with these expansion, and it also has a different mindset when you look at 14 being an MMO with the subscription, what you get for that, and then it sets the tone. If Destiny came out and said that, hey, we're gonna have a subscription, it's $5 a month, and you get the DLC and all this stuff for free, it sets the tone. So all of a sudden, this is the expectation.
What does $5 get you? So now WoW and Final Fantasy, the two biggest MMOs in a traditional sense, in a subscription model sense, says that they have to deliver 3 times that. For lack of a better, not literal, it's not like, oh, well, they have exactly 3 times the number of dungeons, 3 times the classes, 3 times the maps, but that they do have to deliver 3 times the content to justify the same value.
And so there's a couple other things I want to impact here off the comment. And so we're talking about, we talked about the subscription piece, but also let's talk about the taking of a breaks, and that Yoshi P, the game's developer, does encourage people to take breaks. And I agree with that assessment. I think it's healthy. I think it's good for people to take breaks from games, to be able to come back and enjoy them, because there's also a lot of content out there. And MMO can tend to dominate a lot of your game time, and thus there could be games that you miss, and sometimes it's healthy to go and say, I'm going to step back from this. Chris, you actually made a video regarding, is there mixed messages from Square Enix regarding this, because if you take too long of a break, they'll repossess your house.
They will, literally.
So there is a bit of it, and it was an interesting topic. I was really actually I was interested in it, but I don't think the fact that they encourage you to take breaks is wrong. I think content patch, you're paying $15 a month. I think I pay less because I'm legacy, within the system. But at the end of the day, I feel like the patch, when it drops, there's just a ton of content there. And it's usually, in my mind, designed to take up the next 1.5 months. The patch cycle being around 3.5 months for Final Fantasy. But then you look at that and compare it to Destiny 2, in which the game launched in September, October, November, December. So around the same kind of time frame, costing you $20. So obviously you break that down, it's $5 a month if you were, the subscription, kind of area. But the content, I don't think, is even comparable. No. I think that's the big other people, and I've seen reviews saying this is a joke. This.
It takes me 1 day, maybe 2, to push through all of it.
And Osiris is such a huge part of the lore and a huge part of the world, and to have it just completely just blah. They
should have had a whole new planet waiting. They should have had. It should have been massive.
Yeah, and it could have been, and then that's kind of my issue with it. In and of itself, is that you don't need to gate. You can always just add new. But they decided that, okay, yeah, this is here now. Now it moves into this tier, and then instead of saying, oh, there's a whole new tier that you now have access to, and it's encouraged, etc.
It's just deceitful.
It is.
Thinking back to people with limited budgets, when I was on allowance as a kid, to be told that I have this, and then now to have it taken away from me, it's like, do you know how long it took me to save that money up? And now it's gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, imagine the kid who opens this game up on Christmas Day. His parents got it for him. They heard it was really good. They got him the base game, and he gets in, and he couldn't do it. And
now he's got to ask for something else, and he doesn't have a birthday till 3 months out or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the last piece there is the microtransactions via the Mog Shop. Microtransactions is a totally separate conversation, and I think have to just keep plugging everything, but Brian has a video out on that too. Because we've talked about a lot of this big stuff lately, and this is really all of it coming together. That's what these community feedbacks do. And there's a big difference. The mob shop, you go there and you buy purely cosmetic items directly for cash. They're not bright Ingrams, they're not loot boxes. There's no sense of random to them. You know exactly what you're getting, and they are 100% cosmetic. They are not items that do something fancy for you in game, in the sense of unlocking, like Battlefront, everything where it literally changes the gameplay. They are totally 100% optional, just like it's optional to order a Square Enix t-shirt or a plush doll of one of the characters to sit on, your bed or your desk or whatever. I think Brian has one laying around. So, that is very different. There it is. And so that's the exact same as buying a in-game item off of the mod shop, depending on whether you view virtual items and fake items as worth the same is not really the point. He paid an amount of money for something that will never come back in the form of money, and it didn't actually change the way anything in his life or his gameplay functioned. It's just a pillow.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's where I think there's a big differences. So you're drawing some, some comparisons, and I'm not, I have no issue with that, but I do think it is two different, markets, two different pieces of content, and then it's also two different levels of expectation. I know what I'm getting for my time and my money in 14. With Destiny, I thought I did, and then it turned out that was not true. And it's not also just about me. I think it's about the greater conversation and structure with that. But you know what, thank you, Judy, for this comment. I really do appreciate it, and thanks for being out there. All right, so Fred Flintstone writes, and I really wish I could do his voice. Yabba dabba do. I can't do it. I can do a Barney, but I probably can't with my voice right now. So he says, if I couldn't pay for the Destiny 2 and its DLC with World of Warcraft Gold, I would have been pissed. This is a really half-baked game with limited amounts of fun to be had. I actually can't believe they call Curse of Osiris DLC. It's half a planet with all the content in the same quote-unquote forest.
Right. It should have been a full-blown planet. Should have been, hands down.
Mercury's the planet, last I checked.
they talked about Destiny 2 being this new 10-year game that was going to do everything right this time around. And so it should have launched with the handful of planets it did, and we should be getting a new, complete planet every single content patch, so that we are building up a solar system, so that by the time this thing is as big as or doubling the size of a current planet, right? The current planets are not done, so wrap them all the way around, something like that. Should have been much bigger. And so paying for this with some form of basically monopoly dollars would have been a much better purchase.
Agreed. Essentially, though, I am actually jealous of that fact, being able to do and play and pay for it with gold. It's one of the things that I've actually been always interested in with Blizzard and their ecosystem, is that you can fund the game by playing other games. You can pay for your subscription with WoW Gold and then use that to pay for Overwatch and for all this stuff in their ecosystem. It is cool. Like, at the end of the day, it's something I would love to see brought into Final Fantasy for that fact, because sometimes I just sit on Gil for no reason.
Yeah, it's not a new system.
Not a new system, but
EVE Online does it. Works great.
Yeah, and so I think there, to unpack his comment a little bit, is that in his case, he got it for free, so it's less of a burn because he's able to, and by free, by supplementing it with gold, fake money. But the volume and the content that just wasn't there, and that's the thing that boggles my mind even more. As they talked about Destiny 2 and having 3 studios, not just Bungie. There's 2 other studios out there that they said were working on this game, and I was like, that, to me, and this is where my expectations got off, was that I was like, oh, if they have Studio A working on Curse of Osiris, that the volume must be a lot larger. Then they have Studio B working on this.
What could a whole studio do with basically 3 times the time?
Yeah, exactly. And then you can have
them 2 times the time, and there's one always working on the next major expansion.
Exactly. And then that way you almost condense the Call of Duty yearly annual thing into every 3 months. And if you have that every 3 months, like update,
$20 every 3 months is $80 a year. And so they're technically getting me for a little bit more, but I'm really getting a whole new game that's been totally replaced by that point, not simply layered on top of.
Yeah, I think that the content and the size is definitely disappointing, and people feel it. But it's one prick, or it's one cut. Like you think death by 1,000 cuts, and they kept cutting and cutting and cutting, and then there's still people. And if you guys are enjoying the game, awesome. And like I said, you know what? If you're having fun, I'm happy for you. I don't think everybody needs to join me in this regards, but for me, this was the final cut, and I was like, I can't support this this product anymore. Anyway, Fred Flintstone, thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate it.
All right, and Shattered Blur. I don't know why you may not like Destiny 2, which is fine by all means, and PlayStation should refund it, and so should retailing companies. People are going to attack me for my opinion, such as the internet, but I support the DLC. It's $20 for a new piece of content that takes about as long as Crota's End, and the Prophecy tablets are a great form of endgame to grind for. Mercury is pretty lackluster as far as content goes, but Bungie has failed when it comes to making PvE locations as far as the Destiny franchise goes, so I'm not too surprised. I liked the story just because it ties in with the lore, but that's just me. I know some people didn't like it. The Bright Ingram scenario is annoying, and they should have been throttling XP gains, but it's all cosmetic anyway, so I'm not too annoyed. The grind has been pretty good for Destiny 2, and I only see it getting better, although, as many people agree, Destiny 1 finally achieved a polished state, and Bungie went and changed that with Destiny 2, so with those 3.5 years of making one of the most expensive games in the world was a waste on Bungie's part. I like Destiny 2 though, and unless they begin to ruin the game altogether and begin to throw out more things out the window, I'm probably not going to leave.
This is and what I take from this, and thank you, Shattered, for your comment here. And again, yeah, you can, I wanted to highlight your comment because, yeah, I'm glad you're having fun, and that's important. But for me, like, I even, again, was even worried, like, are we going to redo all this in 3 years? In 3 years, they're going to say Destiny 3, and then everything we've done again, completely thrown out the window. That makes me not want to log in. That makes me not want to play. And then this happened, and then it's like, why? You know what? Why am I fighting myself to play this game? If you're having fun, and honestly, I really want people who enjoy this game, enjoy the lore, to have a good time. We're gamers. Like, I have no... I do not care. Like, if you guys are having a good time, that's awesome. I support it. This is exactly what you needed to play. You just need to make sure your voices are heard. It seems like for whatever reason, like Bungie just keeps stumbling and keeps falling and keeps tripping on themselves, keeps shooting their own foot, keeps putting their foot in their own mouth. And you're like, am I in love with the game, or am I in love with the drama that surrounds the game? And I think to highlight a couple other people's comments that we're not actually putting up on screen, a lot of people are like, oh, you'll just be back when the next DLC drops, or you'll be back with the next expansion, or you'll be back with Destiny 3. And it's like, honestly,
I don't think I will.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
The market's too big. It's not so much that, wow, Destiny, I'm done with you. Mm-hmm. It's I didn't marry Destiny. I didn't take out a loan on my house to pay for Destiny. So Destiny is effectively a girl that I would like to go on a couple dates with. We'd like to hang out, get to know each other, and then I find out, she said we were only going to be seeing each other, and it turns out she's been seeing a bunch of other guys, and she's been lying to me. I could try to win that back. I could try to look behind. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe we didn't communicate well, but I could also look up and say there's 3.5 billion other women in this world. And so it's not so much that Bungie couldn't fix this game. It's not so much that they couldn't get it better. You're right. We expected them to go from a well-developed first game and have this next one come out of the gates running at the same speed. And Brian and I have tried to be very big defenders of it's not going to have all the same features. Mm-hmm. It's going to be missing some features. But when they start just blatantly causing missteps, I have to question, is it time to date those other people? The people who haven't yet burned me, even if they can turn it around. There's, as we've seen in the comments, a dozen games that I hadn't even looked at because I didn't have room in my lineup. And now I do. I'm excited to try those out.
Division, Warframe. We Chris put out a video. We're talking about we picked up PUBG and we picked up Warframe. And we're going to play those games, and we'll let you guys know what we think about them once we put in a good enough time with it.
And if you're room, Monster Hunter World is next month.
Yeah, Monster Hunter World. There's so much good content. I shouldn't have to pull You know, excuse me, still having that, getting over the flu. I shouldn't have to pull myself. I shouldn't have to try to motivate myself to play. And that's the thing. You know, I think that leads to burnout. I think that leads to violent, just anger towards any kind of IP or product.
Sure, it could become a great game. And anybody who enjoys where this game ends up, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. Go off and ride into the sunset. That's awesome. I hope that every single gamer can find that game they're passionate about. I just am not going to sit around and wait for this game to be that for me when there's so many games I haven't yet even tried.
Exactly. So we're, you know, with you, Shattered, in that regards. I hope, and there's others. So people who are like, you know what, I'm gonna keep, you know, hoping that they keep doing.
And I haven't uninstalled. I'll give it a shot.
Chris hasn't. I have. I think somebody's like,
once I do uninstall, I'm probably done with the studio. So, and there's too many other good studios out there.
Yeah.
There's too many other people that I'd love to see what they're doing with gaming.
I did completely uninstall. I went even further. I've unfollowed. Yeah. I've basically
shame on you. Burned me twice. Shame on me. I should have gone and tried another studio.
Yeah, I think for me, I was that I look at it kind of in that relationship because people are like, "You'll be back," and I'm like, you know, I do have a tendency to forget and forgive, and it's a good part of my personality. But at the end of the day, like I look at this like any kind of relationship, and so I've unfollowed on Twitter. I've unsubscribed in the YouTube. I don't want news. If they turn it around and have the Cinderella story of the year, literally, I'm not going to know about it, and I'm not going to talk about it on the channel. Maybe Chris will know or whatever, but literally there will be an act of God or something that would have me take interest, because it's like I was in a relationship with a girl. She cheated on me. She betrayed me and betrayed that trust. And then it's like I'm not following her on Facebook.
Maybe you guys can be happy there. Maybe, but why?
You know, I'm gonna let enough time go. I'm gonna let the wounds heal. I'm just gonna go, and I'm gonna be who I am and be happy about what I'm playing and having that experience and being happy about talking about it. I was laughing to myself because Chris and I were like in another video talking about how one of us is gonna get up tomorrow morning to talk about the live letter, to cover the live letter. And I was actually thinking this week, I was like, oh man, like I'm not gonna have to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to cover Azur's inventory. And then I was like, well, if I get up for this, then, well, either way, it's like I thought I was going to sleep in on Friday morning, but I'm not in that case.
Oh, you would have had to do them. We would have had to do them at the same time.
Oh man, that'd be awful.
We would have had to do the live letter and Zur in the same morning.
But we talk about, like, you bring up a lot of the things. Like I said, Bungie keeps putting shooting themselves in the foot. The Bright Ingrams, the XP, the this. And it's like, you know what? All right, I give up. I'm done. Yep. So.
I'm trying to book a big, long play session for my first Warframe so that ideally I can try to enjoy it all at once. So,
anyway, Shattered, thank you so much for your comment. Thanks for being out there. I really hope that Bungie turns it around for you and for all the people who have faith in it. I don't want this video or anything I say to take that away from you. If you're having fun, great. That's important. If you're with me, that's awesome too. I think that we as gamers have to stand up. We have to be heard. If we find these practices unacceptable, we can't just leave. We gotta be heard, because otherwise, like Chris said, at some point they're not gonna know why, and they could make the wrong choices because they don't have the data. Anyway, that was just my thoughts. We got
Thank you guys. Yeah. There was literally so many comments. There was a lot of great stuff going on down that comment section. So on each of the videos about this. So thank you guys, and definitely welcome to all of the new faces. We have a much larger community than we did just a week ago, so definitely welcome to Work to Game. We talk about all sorts of games here. Obviously, Final Fantasy being our MMO that we pay subscriptions to of choice, it tends to come up a lot because that's what MMOs do. They put out a ton of content, but we play all kinds of things. So definitely welcome.
Glad to have you here. Let us know in the comments below what you think about this, any of these comments, and let's continue that conversation. But for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching this video, and we hope you have a fantastic week.
We'll see you next time.
Hey, it's me. I'm in Chris's office. He doesn't know it, but we've got other videos for you to check out right here. And we've got the vlog down there in the corner. Plus, we've got some contact information, and you can totally subscribe to the channel that way as well. So we hope you do. We hope to see you in our next video, but until then, take care.